All right. Well, that seemed to cut off a little abruptly there. I may need to work on the timing of that a little bit, but we are live on a Friday morning. Couple of technical glitches, so we're getting started a couple of minutes late, but, you know, it's really early for our streams. Matter of fact, it may be a little too early for some whiskey, but if I really plan on getting anything else done today anyway. But according to YouTube, this is when the majority of you guys are online watching our content, so I thought I'd give it an early morning stream a try. Now, please let me know in the comments if you like these early or if the afternoon works better for you, because this is all about the conversation. This is all about your engagement, and so we want to be available when it's best for you. Now, today I have some folks from Workarea coming on the stream to explain to us why in the world you'd go out and try to start your own e-commerce platform this day and age with so many good options out there. But first, as always, a word from our sponsor. By Mage Mojo. And I want to take a minute and talk about Magento hosting, because Magento hosting is a lot like hauling stuff in my Tundra here. It's about having a tool that is sized properly for the job. This Tundra's great if I'm on the farm and I want to tow something like my old pickup truck here. But what if I wanted to tow... Uh-oh. That just cut our commercial off. That's great. Something bigger, all like, sorts of technical difficulties. Well, then this just isn't the right tool for the job.
We know this because Toyota did it. This is a publicity stunt to show how awesome this truck is. And sure, it's pulling it, but look at how slow it is. Those people on foot are literally having to slow down to not pass this thing.
And that's a lot like Magento in that you need a proper hosting environment. I've been doing Magento as long as Magento's been doing Magento, and in all of that time, I've never seen somebody who can build a site to overcome improper hosting. And with increasing customer demands, slow is just not acceptable. Mage Mojo understands the needs of Magento merchants because they focus only on Magento hosting, and they've built a reputation as a premier Magento hosting provider. They've built an incredible Magento cloud hosting platform so that their customers enjoy the speed, reliability, and scalability of cloud servers. And if you geek out about technical details, ask them about how they provide automatic horizontal scaling for free. With cloud hosting from Mage Mojo, there's no more worrying about flash sales or Cyber Monday traffic. If you operate a Magento store, then you need to check out Mage Mojo Hosting. The link is in the description of this live stream, or you can just go to magemojo.com. That's magemojo.com. Well, a few technical glitches out of the way. That's all. I promise. That is the last technical glitch we are going to have for this live stream. I can't promise that. That would just be lying to you guys, but it's okay. Apparently, I used an older version of the stream to set up because we're going to have two guests today, and we don't normally have two guests anymore. And apparently, the auto switching is still on, so a loud noise automatically switch to focus. We'll work on that, and we'll deal with it as we get through. But now that we've got all the sponsorship stuff out of the way, let's get this party rolling. If you would, spam some applauses in the chat and help me welcome Bill Tarbell, VP of Marketing, and Matt Dunphy, Senior Solutions Engineer at Workarea, to the stream. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me this morning.
Great to be here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, did I get the names right? Because I didn't even, we had an hour hanging out, and I just realized, I didn't even ask pronunciations to make sure I got those right.
You nailed it. It's spelling where people have trouble with Dunphy.
Yeah, well, there's a few options with that. So
yeah, it's funny what sneaks in there.
So, Bill, if you would, give us the rundown on the title question for this stream. Let's just get it on the table. Yeah. What exactly is Workarea?
Awesome. Yeah. So Workarea fundamentally is an e-commerce platform. We have a kind of unique approach to doing things. We have a couple core tenets that we've built into the platform. So it's not only a commerce platform, but we really care about content management. So that's built in. We think site search is very important and fundamental. So that's built in as well. And then we have a lot of merchant insights built in. It's a SaaS product, Workarea Commerce Cloud. So our customers subscribe. But even though it's SaaS, it's very flexible. So full API, full ability for developers to get in there, build functionality, and create the best shopping experiences for their customers.
So the next question is then, why? Like, why would you go through the trouble this day and age of trying to create your own e-commerce platform from scratch?
I think I'll grab onto that because I've actually been at this company almost 14 years now. Workarea was built sort of as the next stage in evolution for the company WebLink, which was an agency. We had a lot of experience doing e-commerce. The company's almost 25 years old. And when I started, we had wrapped up things like half.com and Crayola. I personally, the first thing that I worked on when I was at the company was building out Google Analytics integration for what was then called Football Fanatics. This was, when I joined, it was 2006. The company really started because our co-founders, a couple of brothers named Darren and Jason Hill, were selling like punk t-shirts online. And it turns out it's cheaper to sell the store than it is to sell. Sorry, you make more money selling the store than you make selling the t-shirts. But as time grew on, as we were building these bespoke enterprisey builds, we found that we ran into the same kind of problems that you would be familiar with Magento. Upgrading is tough because you do a lot of customization. But when we looked at what was out in the market at the time, and I'm talking about 6 years ago, you had like early Shopify and Salesforce, which was Demandware at the time, and they didn't have that flexibility that you had. So we had to sit back and think, we're really good at building e-commerce sites. Do we just implement other people's stuff, or do we try to solve for a problem in the market? And we took the harder road. I don't know, Bill, do you have any color to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think, I think your intro was good, but I think the assumption there was that everybody loves their commerce platform. And we just didn't see that to be the case, right? It's actually our tagline is we want our merchants to really love the tool that helps them sell. So there's a huge focus on business tools, right? If you break down commerce to its fundamental level, it's a merchant with a product, an idea they want to communicate, and the commerce site or any other touch point with the customer is a way for them to transact, right? So we want to get them from that idea to the customer and present it off, in an awesome way as quickly as possible. So that's kind of why we came up with the name Workarea. Our customers love working in the admin. We think that that's a differentiator, a really smart, high-performing team powered by data, by the ability to execute on their creative ideas and campaigns quickly is going to help them sell more.
Now, Alan McGregor in the chat here had an interesting point, or a correction, I guess. Workarea is not new. It may be new to me, but it's not new. Like, when did you guys actually launch the first version of Workarea that was publicly available?
Yeah, so Workarea first came to market in its current form, which is the Commerce Cloud, in around February 2017. Yeah, and since there, it's evolved a bit. At the time, like Matt said, we were a professional services agency, right? So we did all of our own builds. We had no partners doing stuff. It's great to hear that Alan joined because he was a former partner of ours, so he knows a lot about the platform. So it's not only launching the platform, it's building that community around the platform, getting our own people in terms of implementation, teaching other companies how to implement. So I think that final chapter as a product company kind of closed last year when we sold our agency division to one of our best partners, Brand Value Accelerator. They do a lot of Shopify work and Workarea work. And then at that time, we were a pure product company. And we also decided to open source the platform. So we're a cloud open core platform. So the community can go download the code on GitHub and play around and talk to us if they need help to get it going or use our services.
So Ben Marks in the chat here, who has shifted from making me jealous, posting pictures of all of his trips all around the world, to posting pictures of his puppy on the beach. Still jealous, Ben. But he asked a question here. Have you heard of Magento? Now I'm gonna change that one a little bit. We're gonna clarify just a little bit. How are you different than Magento? I mean, obviously
That's
you're
a good question.
SaaS, but other than just
Yeah.
being SaaS, like how do you stand out versus Magento or any platform? How, we can broaden that a little bit. How are you different
Yeah.
than the big players in the space right now?
That's a great question, and I'll let Matt add on to my perspective. So I actually worked at eBay when Magento was part of eBay, so I know Magento very well. My team built the original Luma demo, so have a soft spot in my heart for Magento. It's a great platform. But why we're different, I think there's a couple things. Number one, Workarea was built for cloud infrastructure. I won't get into the technical aspects of how that works, and Matt can dig into that. But I also think our functional scope is a little bit broader. From day one, we really prioritize content management and experience. So the integration of commerce and content are, they're first-class citizens in the platform, content and product and commerce configurations. I think search is really important as well. We embed Elasticsearch and have done a lot of innovation on top of that platform to do really cool things. It's a different tech stack. We like to talk about how it's a more modern tech stack. It's a standard Ruby on Rails application. The database is a NoSQL database. It's MongoDB, so that allows for rich, unstructured data without the need to change XML files and do database design. And like I said, it's built for the cloud, so we can. There's a lot of sort of back-end DevOps and automation and testing suite and the things that developers love with the platform as well. So maybe Matt, you can add some stuff.
Sure. And I mean, that's a great question because that is probably the closest comparison because we're open source, because we have a lot of enterprise features and a lot of enterprise history. I was just on a call with somebody who's moving away from Magento, and they were talking about an audit that they were doing with Magento Cloud, where they're asking like, so how much traffic do you think you're going to get? Because we need to figure out what kind of resources to allocate to you. And they were like, do we need to tell you that? And part of how we were built for the cloud, to talk markety for a little bit. It's auto scaling, the hosting and all of that is built off of a really strong background that we grew up scaling companies like Nasty Gal and Free People, and learning from that and building our platform around the sudden spikes that happen, the unexpected traffic that you might get, and really trying to make it so that it's not just us that doesn't have headaches around that, but the folks on the platform don't have to ask questions. There's no cache clear button in our admin because, I mean, it's the same reason cars don't have a choke on them anymore. Like it's 2020. You shouldn't have to think about that if you're a marketer. Likewise, I think we had somebody speaking at one of our early summits who maybe took our roadmap over to Magento. I don't know. There's a lot of things that we have built that we've seen some attempts at other platforms attempting to do what we do, but because we're on the stack that we are, we're able to do really nice live site previews. Site Planner, Bill might have talked about a little bit, is something that's really native and invented at Workarea, where you can stage changes across content, across product, catalog, discounts, all of that in your production environment, and preview and transact in the production environment, because with MongoDB, you're basically doing a live data migration while you preview the site. And what that means in layman's terms, marketers and merchandisers, they don't have to deal with the staging site.
It's basically it's basically a publishing tool for e-commerce.
Okay. Hey, it's your stream, man. You go as long as you want to go until people ask questions. We do have another question in the chat, and then I want to kind of unpack a few of the things that you mentioned there. But Arjun in the chat, his question is the platform usable for a freelancer? But I'm gonna expand that question just a little bit. Like, who is the ideal target audience? Like, what size merchant, what type of merchant, are there particular industries? Can a freelancer, can somebody just getting started be successful on the platform? Realistically, of course, somebody that's just starting can fire up any platform if they want to pay the money. But realistically, what's the best merchants for you and the best developer skill set?
Yeah, the quickest shortcut to that is, mid-market and enterprise. I think there are use cases in the SMB market where someone's very ambitious and wants to get their hands in the technology. But both B2C and B2B companies that want to differentiate with technology on the user experience level, or have a real important desire for content management with their commerce platform, are great fits for us. So as an example, one of our best customers is a women's apparel brand, vertically integrated company. They do online, they do retail. They have a small development team that's been trained up on Workarea, and they're doing every dollar of revenue through the platform, both online and sort of headless retail through their stores and store associate apps and that kind of stuff. So it's if you want a cart, catalog, and checkout and have a few products, it's probably not your best solution. I think there are other more cost-effective ways to get there. But for merchants that have that creativity and that need to kind of differentiate around the customer experience, that's where we're a great fit.
For the freelancers, I would say we're still kind of in the early stages of being open source. It's been about a year since I think we open sourced the platform. And you can go to DigitalOcean and there's a Workarea droplet, and you can actually just spin up a Workarea instance. And there's over on GitHub, you can pull down. It takes about 5 minutes, not including downloading time, to get a Dockerized version of Workarea, so you can get it up and running and dive right in. To be fair, the open source version is not going to have the auto scaling magic of our SaaS platform, but you can get started. And if you want to, if you have questions about like where to host it or things like that, we do have a Slack community where you can get involved with that. But I think it's still early days, right? Folks are still figuring out how to take this Ruby on Rails, MongoDB, Elasticsearch stack and launch that for something that's smaller than your 10 million annual revenue type company.
So that was going to be my next line of questioning. I mean, you clearly stated that you're SaaS, and then you throw out words like open source, which normally is a marketing gimmick for a SaaS platform. Like, we're in SaaS, or we have this, PWA front end that we've developed that's open source, but the actual business logic is SaaS. But you guys have actually released the full platform as open source or SaaS? Is that
sorry for a little bit?
Okay.
So
I was just, did you release is it an either or? Like, I can sign up for the SaaS platform and start building, or I can download all of the source code as open source?
You can download the open source code, do that way. But even as the hosted SaaS solution, the way that it works, this is part of why we chose Ruby on Rails, actually, is there's a design pattern called decoration that allows you to extend the platform to do some pretty big things on it in a way that doesn't interrupt the upgrade path. Now, of course, being open source, if you go in there and you're like, you know what, I want Solar Search instead of Elastic for some reason, you're going to have more trouble upgrading. But we also have command line tools that when an upgrade comes down, and this is sort of the difference between us and like a Shopify, you take the upgrades at your own pace. You run the Workarea upgrade tool, and it's going to look at what you've modified, and it's going to compare what is available in the new version and give you a path to like, oh, you need to tweak these 10 files. We also, part of the thing that makes it easier for us to do this is we've got 97% automated test coverage on the platform. So as you build out features, commit the code, that's going to run through automated testing, and it prevents like critical failures from going up in a development or production environment. So when it's SaaS, it's also important to note that it's single tenant SaaS. You get your own instance on AWS. You're not sharing in sort of a traditional sense there. You live in your own world, so you're not going to be affected by anybody else's. If Jeffree Star has a big sale, that doesn't impact you.
Using
Yeah,
mobile
and
videos
one
against
of,
me. I see that.
yeah,
We were all watching
one of
that.
the
That
other
was, yeah.
one of the other motivations, TJ, was not just for the freelancers, but also for enterprise companies, right? We believe that choosing an e-commerce platform is such a critical, high risk, decision to make, and um, we often show our code in our larger, more enterprise deals, anyways, right? So for us, this was really kind of coming from our company's stance on just transparency, right? We really want our customers to tinker with it. We're launching a major U.S. Bedding and mattress retailer later this year, and their tech team kicked the tires before they decided to go with the cloud. And I think that's really important from a trust perspective, especially with a newer entrant like us in the market.
Okay, and everybody that's watching, this is a live Q&A, so ask your questions in the chat. I do have one or two there I'm going to get to shortly. We'll try to get to those on a first come, first serve basis. But so pricing, what's the pricing difference between going with, well, first of all, how is it priced? Second, is there a pricing difference between the open source and the cloud version?
Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah, so our only product is our Commerce Cloud. Right. So for open source, you can go on GitHub, you can put that into production as a merchant, find your own hosting, find your own support. The Commerce Cloud is obviously the software. There's a number of additional plugins that we maintain and are available to our merchants on there. Some additional functionality, but I would say 95% of the platform is in GitHub. And it's on a monthly basis. So our pricing starts around $6,000 and goes up based on volume. There's different flexibility that we have in there around, how we price, and we can kind of get unique and fit different models, but that's sort of the general area. It's based on a rev share for those merchants. And yeah, that seems to be the model that most of our customers prefer from a predictability perspective, financial modeling perspective. And within that cost, it's a lot more than just the hosting and the software. There's PCI compliance, there's guaranteed performance, there's automatic upgrades to the platform that are available if they wish to take them. There's access to our support team. So there's a sort of a full sort of enterprise cloud experience, similar to a multi-tenant experience, but it's a single tenant platform because we really encourage fitting the software to their business use case and their aspirations. And that often requires some back-end development that's really challenging to do on a multi-tenant system.
So just to clarify, though, there's no functionality differences between the open source version and the SaaS offering outside of, hosting related auto scaling. Is there anything that you're holding, internally for that SaaS version?
Yeah, there are a handful of plugins which are in our cloud expansion pack, which we call it, right? These are basically Ruby gems that are functionality that is not yet available to the open source community. That includes our B2B plugins, some subscription commerce plugins. We have a fantastic multi-site and multi-brand site builder capability. So if you're a company that manages multiple brands and sites, that's a tool. There's some advanced omni-channel capabilities and order management tools like pickup in store and that kind of stuff. I might be missing some things, Matt, but those, down the road, we're thinking about, if there's demand for those things, how we might make those available to the open source community down the road. But today, that was sort of our decision when we launched the Commerce Cloud platform to keep a handful of those to differentiate a bit.
Okay, and I know you guys will argue it's a little different, but just to put it in a concept that people are familiar with, it's very similar to what Magento is doing at this point, right? Like you have the open source version, you have the enterprise version, which is your set of modules that add functionality, and then they've got obviously their cloud hosting. So right now, though, for you can't have those enterprise versions and host it elsewhere. Like they're all locked into your SaaS environment until you figure out kind of how you want to handle that.
Yeah, today, you can talk to our sales team, and I'm sure they would sort of cut deals and allow people to access those. We have an ability to distribute those, but we don't have a marketplace, right? A plugin marketplace yet. That's sort of on a roadmap. We don't have sort of the ability, we have demand for, our partners want to build plugins as well, right? So those are things that are on the roadmap that we're really thinking through doing.
Okay. Now, go ahead. Did you have something else?
Oh, I was just going to mention, I think Magento's on their third cloud at this point. They'll get there.
I'm looking at the chat. I don't know. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole. We're gonna keep it on the positive. We're gonna keep it on the positive here. And I've got a few questions in the chat. Keep those questions coming. We will get to them here in just a second. They just keep saying so many interesting things that I want to make sure I explore before I forget about them. So you mentioned specifically that you don't have an app marketplace. And that's a really big thing to try to grow a community around a platform. And, I feel like community is probably the most important thing to make a platform extremely successful and, widely accepted, to make it mainstream. Is you've got to have that community of people that are, building for it to accelerate what can be done with the platform, but also just promoting it. Without having that's obviously a limitation. But what else? Is there anything else outside of that the other mainstream platforms have as an advantage over you at this point?
So what do other platforms have over us?
What's your weakness? What's your weakness, right?
Brand awareness. The hardest thing for me as a sales engineer is getting to the point where they see the admin. Once we get folks in front of what the platform actually looks like from the day-to-day basis, it's transformational. You get like, oh, what's this Workarea, to like, this is really slick. And yeah, it's, it really is just the fact that we are smaller than, I don't know, these companies that have skyscrapers like Adobe and Salesforce. That's kind of the big one.
Functionality wise, though, there's nothing. You don't think any of those platforms have anything functionality wise that you don't offer or do better?
I know that I think as agencies, you could probably make a lot more money with Magento because it takes more time to develop things on Magento. And likewise with Salesforce, it's a bit more complicated to expand that platform. But in terms of functionality, we come from a very bespoke world of building complex sites. I think that's why I enjoy the conversations that you have along the lines of Magento, because I see a lot of the same battle scars. There's a reason why we don't compete with Shopify. It's the same reason Magento is not competing with Shopify. The Shopify is for a more simple business. That's not to say they can't do volume or can't do this, but as you get into complexity, I mean, there's just the example of Shopify. I was reading the other day, somebody was complaining about how they needed 4 different apps just to have swatches on their multi-variant product. And we just have that out of the box. We have a lot of features that are just turnkey out of the box. And although Bill said we don't have a plugin marketplace, if you go to plugins.workarea.com, you can see the framework being built for that there. We do have plugins that you can just grab, and that's sort of a bit of a confusing point, admittedly, for folks. They go there and they're like, are these extra? No, they're just libraries that you install, and if you're going to have to pay Avalara, obviously, but you don't need that feature there. But you can see when you visit that site that we're laying the groundwork for eventually opening that up to being a marketplace.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a pretty big weakness at this. Well, I mean, you guys are really going for that mid-market and higher. So, spending a little extra money for an integration or, having to write it from scratch is not as big of a deal as a small merchant having that same problem, right? Because, I mean, right now, I can't think of a single website we've built in the recent history that didn't have at least a couple of marketplace extensions to add functionality.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, platforms almost always build middle of the road, what appeals to the most people, because we've got to sell this thing and we have limited resources, and then, let the marketplace fill in the gaps. But, with you guys not really having that at this point, but you're saying that's pretty much your main weakness. Like, there's nothing else. There's no other gaps in your functionality.
Yeah, I mean, we've beat out SAP Hybris, and we've had one company, a jewelry company in Texas, that they went out to the market. It was, I think, maybe a fit for commerce thing, and it was down to us and Oracle, and they went with Oracle, and it after about a year, they came back out to the market, said, we spent a lot of money, it didn't do what we needed it to do. They made us jump through the hoops again, but eventually ended up selecting us. They made their money back in 4 months because of the dramatic improvements that they saw. It really is just, for us, in that area that we're in, the mid-market, I think it is the name recognition more than anything else, because while we don't have as many integrations as you'll see on Shopify or Magento, we are built truly API first. We come from a world of having to do weird integrations. Whether you're working on something that started out as an Excel spreadsheet, turned into an Access database, and then a VB application, and you've got to connect to Joe's ERP, or connecting to an AS400 or Sage or eCommerce. We've been through that pain, and that factored heavily into the architecture that we have. And so it's a lot less work to integrate into Workarea. And as you said, given the size of our clients, it's not really a big deal.
Now, I feel like you're...
Yeah, I think we did...
go ahead.
Oh, TJ, I was going to say, I'm no longer a developer, so I can't make this claim too strongly, but we did sort of a lines of code count analysis, right, as a proxy for, complexity of system against the Magento repository. And Workarea is about a tenth lines of code. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the frameworks that we've chosen to use, right? Ruby on Rails, sort of built for the web, built-in API readiness. We're not modeling data with XML files because we have MongoDB. We could literally write data right to the platform. So, I think Matt's claim about ease of customization and not necessarily shying away from some of these things, I think some of the technology decisions our product team made really makes that a lot easier to do. And I'd love to kind of hear, like, if Alan's still on, some perspective. We were hoping to bring on one of our customers' developers, but yeah, that's something that we want people to kick the tires and see, right? Play around with Workarea on your local machine. If you know Rails, give us feedback.
All right, we've got a few questions in the chat. I do feel like you mentioned that just getting people to see the admin and you win deals is begging me to fire up the screen share. Like, you're just begging me to fire up the screen share. So we're going to do that here in a bit. We're going to do that. We may run a little long on the stream to be able to do that, but I want to get all of these questions in the chat real quick and make sure we get all of these answered before we go down that road. Robert over on LinkedIn asks, following my question on ideal customer, what is the ideal partner and how will Workarea compete with the partner programs and app ecosystem like BigCommerce, Magento, or Shopify? I'm not sure about compete as the question there, but yeah. What's the ideal partner? And you might want to clarify there, Robert, on the compete with partner programs. I don't know if that's a negative slant based on the Shopify video we released yesterday kind of thing, or if I'm misunderstanding the question. But ideal partner.
Yeah, ideal partner. So we're fairly new to the partner ecosystem and program, right? So we have a number of SIs. I think at this point we have around 15 to 20 kind of trained systems integrators. And a lot of it, frankly, is just fit with us, right? We are working very closely with our partners. We like partners that share the same point of view on the market that we do. the same target market that we have. If they have Rails developers, that's a plus. Although partners of ours have been trained up, and PHP developers can easily get trained up and do Ruby on Rails. We have quite some diversity amongst our partners. So some of our partners are full-blown sort of agencies. They do the strategy, the creative, the design, as well as the technical implementation work. Some of our partners focus more on the technical side of things. We have onshore, blended offshore type models. A lot of our customers, a lot of our partners typically have had experience doing things with other platforms, whether they have done Magento, or have done Shopify, or done Demandware or Hybris. So they come with a great background and I think an informed kind of respect for how we built things and kind of how we crafted the system. All of our partners are really top notch. It's a critical part of making our customers happy, since we no longer do the integration and implementation work. So it's a huge part of our business and a big part of our focus.
John in the chat here, GSD on Workarea. I don't know if is that GSV? Is that I don't know. If you guys know what GSD is, go ahead and answer that.
Yeah,
if not, let's go with GSV.
Get stuff done.
Right. Yeah. What's
this
global sales volume? I assume, like, how big is Workarea? Like how big are the merchants? Like what is your reach, I guess, as far as the overall market there?
Our biggest customers are doing over 100 million online, and then additional on retail if they use Workarea to power point of sale or other sort of headless retail solutions. Obviously, as everyone knows, during the pandemic, e-commerce has increased tremendously, and that on aggregate has been the case for our customers. Although some of our customers, like all of us, have been hit in different ways. This year, we're on track to do over $1 billion in volume on the platform. But again, that's depending on holiday and season, how that all works out. So we're growing at a pretty great clip. But that gives you a sense of kind of the volumes going through Workarea. Yeah.
And if you meant something else by acronyms are not my thing. So if you meant something else by GSD, let me know. But John's got several questions here. He wants to ask about site search capabilities. You had talked about Elasticsearch a little earlier, and that you guys were doing some fun stuff there. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Elasticsearch.
Go ahead.
Go for it, Bill.
This is
Here we go.
Well, I'll give the high level view, right? So the search technology within Workarea not only powers the search bar that our merchants' customers use, it powers so much within the admin, as well as kind of behind the scenes and some functionality that we expose to the website. It is kind of fine-tuned for commerce. It indexes, obviously, your product catalog, but it also indexes all your users, your orders, as well as all the content in the system. So some of our customers are doing things like a single search, but returning articles and content alongside relevant products, which is a great thing to do. Search results can include content in grid, as an example. I know with different systems that's challenging. Like Matt mentioned before, it's built in so that all the cache invalidation and index rebuilding is all done incrementally behind the scenes, right? So when you're an admin user making a change, let's say that you're creating a search redirect, or you're fine-tuning the weighting of how you want your different attributes to affect relevancy. All those things are deployed behind the scenes within Workarea. And Matt can get into a lot more detail about that. Maybe we can hit it in the demo a bit too.
Yeah, I won't get too heavy, but it's really core to the platform. I would hope at this point in 2020, every e-commerce platform has like at least a trusted search partner. But we've had customers who have they've come from having a 6-figure contract with SLI, and they've been able to eliminate that cost because our search is that good out of the box. But like Bill said, it's not just site search. It's a merchandising tool. It's how you navigate the admin. It's used in customer service. It really, when SLI was really kind of SLI. There are a couple of big search platforms out there, and there was sort of talk in our space where if they figured out that they could just put an add to cart button on their results, some of these search platforms could become e-commerce platforms. And so rather than wait for HBO to become Netflix, Netflix became HBO, right? And that was kind of the same approach here. Like, how complicated is search really? And that's also kind of one of these underlying things with how we do things is it's not a black box. It's not a mystery. You know, there's a lot of marketing hype around AI, for example, but everybody's kind of using the same algorithms when you look under the hood. And that's how it is with search. There's by building it into the platform, you not only get a great faceted filtered search that you can interweave content and commerce with, but you can do some really cool stuff by having all of that on one system that would be improbable to do that in a speedy way if you've got a CMS that's separate from your search, that's separate from your catalog, that's separate from your promotions.
All right. On to the next question. If anybody wants to dive into that more specifically, let me know in the chat. All right. Last question from John here, at least in this group. How about the real TCO, total cost of ownership, versus large enterprise platforms?
Yeah, I would love to tell you that we had hard data on that. We have anecdotal data, right? So like Matt said, we are replacing what we would call sort of the first generation enterprise leaders, right? So the on-premise Oracle and Hybris implementations are good fits for us, simply because we're on newer technology, right? Advancements in technology, even outside of our industry, are meant to help people do things more efficiently and faster and smarter, right? So there's some of that there. But yeah, I think that time to market, there's the cost of ownership aspect of sort of time to market and maintainability of the software. But we also feel that it's really important to take into account how easy it is to go from creative idea, right, in a marketer's or a merchandiser's mind, to live on the site, and to be able to iterate on that without having to do site migrations and testing and that kind of stuff. And that speaks to the site planner opportunity, or the site planner functionality that we have, which gives the opportunity for teams to deploy and test multiple things a week, or even in some cases a day, right? They have different campaigns running and that kind of stuff. So there's a operational cost and opportunity that is something that we really focus on as well. Is just the time to market.
Okay, getting through these the rest of these questions, and you said something a little while ago about Magento being on their third cloud. Ben mentions still the same cloud. I'd like to get some clarifications on that statement. What do you mean by they're on their third cloud?
So I'm trying to remember the specifics. There was Magento Go. Is that still a thing?
Was that cloud? That was SaaS. Okay. Magento Go. Point taken.
And I'm trying to remember the earlier iteration. There was an interesting thread that I read on, frankly, the Magento subreddit, where some interesting things come out because, and look, I will state, Magento's obviously doing some things right. They seem to be doing okay. If Adobe is going to buy out Magento for billions of dollars, there's nothing to sneer at there. But when you are built on a relational database system, you don't have the kind of scalability that you get with a document data store. And I think the different variations on whether they've built it internally or acquired it and rebranded it, the Magento cloud offerings have struggled with some of just the architectural limitations that we would have had if we decided to platformize what we were building 10, 15 years ago. There are only so many different ways you can try to address that out there in sort of a SaaS environment, where I guess if at first you don't succeed, try again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Magento Go obviously wasn't a great initiative. That was their first attempt at making kind of a SaaS platform. To be fair, they were trying to go full SaaS with an open source platform. That's a big shift for something that's been architected for, this direction, and to try to shift it. And they were, mistakes were made. I think they learned from that lesson though. And, what they're offering now is PaaS, right? It is platform as a service. It's basically just hosting and a suite of tools included with, your open source product. It's to say this is their third cloud, maybe a little unfair criticism, but I think the statement of they weren't really built for a SaaS environment, fair statement, right? Like that's not their strengths. Is the SaaSness of it, the hands off, the non-technical. But also on the flip side, I would think you would admit, and maybe you won't, we can debate it. The open source nature of it, right? Has some advantages, right? Like that has advantages over SaaS. That going SaaS was trying to continue that being everything for everybody that they were in 2008, 2010. When what they've done now is a little more double down on their strengths while trying to make it a little more all in one from one vendor.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any debate there. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Okay. All right. Ben says we have skyscrapers. Skyscrapers is a building. I Googled it while we were talking. Skyscraper is a building with 40 or more floors. Now, I've been to Adobe's office. I don't think their main office, I don't think it's more than 40. I don't think it's 40 floors. I could be wrong.
Times Square?
Does Adobe have a building in Times Square?
My friend Ian.
Maybe they're a tenant. Maybe they're
they might be a tenant. That's fair. That's fair.
Just because they have their name on the side of a building, they just may be the premier tenant. So I don't know. Maybe that may have been unfair criticism as well. I think the point of that was the big players, the folks that have revenue.
I would argue it wasn't a criticism. I would say that them having that they're very successful. And have great success. We've got a pretty cool building, but it's only 2 stories high. It was built in 1845 and was a bank, and it's a neat place to work when there isn't a deadly pandemic going around.
The town I'm in, there's only one building more than 2 stories, I believe, maybe more than there's a 4-story hospital. It's the biggest building in the town I live in. So I don't know anything about skyscrapers. So I'll leave that to the chat. Do skyscrapers sell more stuff? I would say yes. I believe I could sell more websites if I could put my name on the side of a skyscraper in Times Square. Like people would see the logo, they would be like, they're obviously successful. Let me give them my money. Unfortunately, that's how sales and marketing works to a certain degree. Only gets you so far. You then have to deliver.
Right.
All right. Ben said he'd be interested in your take on Shopify Plus. Because you touched on Shopify and kind of small merchant limitations, those kinds of things. But what about Shopify Plus?
Yeah, Shopify Plus is interesting because they sure crept up, didn't they? We about a decade ago, the majority, I would say, of our e-commerce customers were fashion, and Shopify Plus took a really interesting approach and has certainly eaten away almost completely sort of the smaller side of business, but Plus is getting up into larger, certainly larger companies. I think it's good if you've got sort of a simple business. Oftentimes we'll get folks calling in asking about Workarea, and when they lay out what their problems are, I don't know why you wouldn't be on Shopify Plus. Like, if you're not interacting with weird back-end systems, if you're not doing interesting things in store, if you don't have sort of omni-channel scale, and like 60 stores or something like that, a lot of times Shopify right? Plus will get you, and B2B for sure. But Shopify Plus tends to fall down as you grow. Shopify Plus definitely shows that it was built from a point of simplicity, and they've been trying to expand beyond that, but you run into weird limitations. And it's really interesting talking to folks who grew up on Shopify, because when they see something like a work area, it's almost baffling that there's all of this under one admin. And I'm sure it's kind of the same from a Magento side of things, or a Demandware Salesforce side of things. And they are amazing at marketing. They will tell you Shopify does anything. There's nothing Shopify can't do. Shopify has been doing AR for 3 years, when it's not really Shopify. It's their app marketplace and their partner ecosystem that supports that. And that seems nice until it's Black Friday and you're running 3 different content management tools, and one of them is a dude who's literally living in Vietnam and doesn't have time to answer your support calls. And maybe with all the different apps, they're not hosted on Shopify's infrastructure. So I think you touched on this really well in the Jeffree Star video that you did. That's the kind of thing that if you went to status.shopify.com, it was a green light. It was great. Who knows what other probably 35 apps they were running. Which one of those was tanking everything else? Bill, I talked over you.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of angles to this, and I think we actually have a lot of respect for what they're doing. They're also built on Ruby on Rails, and there's sort of that technology background that's shared between companies. A lot of our partners that have done Shopify Plus have become Workarea partners because they already have that Rails platform. But at the end of the day, we're offering a different type of partnership with our merchants than a multi-tenant SaaS company is, right? Beyond all the functional differences. Like I mentioned before, our customers have a vision to build an experience that is differentiated by the use of technology, right? So, if you are a company like the Books, one of our customers, and they want to completely switch around the checkout process. So, you're ordering flowers and you want to put in when you need to get those flowers first in the first step, and thinking through all those ways to optimize. That's where Workarea really comes into place. And again, it's not a sign up and a credit card and you get your admin. It's something that's more owned and invested in a Workarea solution. So we typically see them when we're competing, but if we're articulating what we are and what we do, there's a pretty clear difference. And again, it's very similar to how Magento would distinguish itself from a Shopify Plus or a BigCommerce type solution.
We've still got quite a few questions and some clarifications on some previous questions that I want to get through, but I really want to see at least a short demo. Could you guys run a little long on this stream? Because we're running up about 6 minutes on the hour, which is all I had you booked for. Can we go okay if we run over a bit?
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm good.
Awesome. Let me get through. I'm going to jump over to LinkedIn. Kevin over on LinkedIn says, I see a list of integrations on your site, but curious why no shipping integrations listed.
Typically that's as simple as connecting. we've got FedEx and UPS. I think part of the reason that we don't have a lot of shipping integrations listed is because people just tend to build them out. Woodcraft is a customer of ours who they had some complex shipping needs. They sell all kinds of things woodworking related, whether that's a workbench or saw blades. And so you would have a mixed cart where some of that's going to be less than truckload freight. Some of that's just going to be FedEx or UPS. And certainly at the time that it was built out, you didn't really have a lot of good options out there from a third party standpoint. But again, speaking relative ease of development in Workarea, you just wrote code for doing that and tied that into existing APIs for shipping platforms.
Andrew in the chat. Andrew, can see work area naturally being pulled further upstream, but are there plans to make the solution more attainable on the lower end for smaller merchants that want something more quote unquote polished than BigCommerce or Shopify? Are you going to try to address the small to mid-sized market, or is enterprise really your play?
Bill, you
Yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
grab that?
I think there's an opportunity. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an opportunity there. I think, we are testing those waters in the sense by putting out the platform and creating, very easy tools for folks to get a local demo going and get sample data in and to quickly play around with it. So, as demand increases for that segment of the market, we'll continue to invest more and the SMB customer is the future mid-market and eventually enterprise customer, right? So we definitely want those folks to have access to the what we think is a great platform, and you know willing to receive feedback where the barriers are so that we can make it easier to get up and going.
Kevin mentions in the chat something like Shipper HQ allows us to not have to build it out. Call Shipper HQ, get them on the phone, call Quentin, tell him I sent you, get integrated with Shipper HQ, and then you've got most of those shipping problems already solved. You don't have to worry about it.
Boom.
There you go.
That's
Easy
great.
enough. Robert clarifies his question earlier about compete with partner programs and app ecosystems. I think his question was more around how do you differentiate yourself? Like right now, Magento is the open source. It's flexible, right? Like it's one of the most flexible e-commerce platforms on the planet. You've got Shopify that's all about we want it simple, spend your resources marketing, growing your business, not on your tech stack. BigCommerce is trying to bridge the gap between those two. How do you guys differentiate? How do you stand out?
Yeah. So what we say, and I think what our partners have found, obviously there's maintenance and a percentage of the work that an agency does for their merchant to keep the platform tuned. But what we found on Workarea is that a larger percentage of those hours can be devoted to the merchant's roadmap as compared to just keeping the site going, right? So, Matt mentioned that, on other platforms, SIs can potentially bill more hours and make more money because it takes longer to do. I think, the flip side of that is they have more time to provide more value to merchants, right? So, I think I mentioned the lines of code. I mentioned the ease of integration, obviously the API. That's something that we've heard and we differentiate on. And, another thing is, our customers, right? Our customers are really doing innovative things in the market, right? A lot of people about what Reformation's doing. They're the retailer that's using Workarea to power their stores. They have fitting rooms with, or call, a stock runner to do stuff. So, we're getting some interest and getting approached. And again, there's sort of the cultural fit where they get trained. There's sort of an onboarding process, but we put so much effort into working with our SIs because they're the front line with our merchants.
All right, looks like we had a little dip in bit rate there. Hopefully all of that came through on everybody's end on the front end. We've been having a little bit of internet connectivity issues here. Doesn't dip out completely. We just have like 30 seconds where the internet quality is kind of poor. So hopefully everything seems to be streaming smooth over there. Still got a lot of questions. I'm going to try to get through these as quickly as possible. Jimbo asks, how does Workarea handle multilingual?
Yeah, that's really built into the structure of our data. So on any site, you can have as many different locales as you like, and you can either stick around for. I'll probably show that in some of the demo that we'll do, or if you go to workarea.com and go to the platform tour, there is a half-hour demo video recording. But you can have as many different languages as you like. Even the admin can be translated. And you set a default language, and then as you go through, you can override that. You can also use the locality to not necessarily be language driven, but use that so that maybe you are a hardware store and you don't want to make certain products active. You're not going to be selling a whole lot of snowblowers in Florida, for example. you can actually leverage that locale feature of Workarea to show and hide different elements of the site based off of locale rather than just language. But it's also multi-site out of the box. So there's sort of a complex matrix that you can build in terms of our Canadian site has English and French, but our American site is using different regions to show things. And of course, that ties into multi-currency as well.
John in the chat, there are multi-billion-dollar brands today that started on Workarea. Don't sleep on them. They're not an Elliott. Okay, for those that are in the chat that are wondering, Elliott was an e-commerce platform that we had on the stream because they made an awful lot of noise and an awful lot of outrageous claims on social media that, for the most part, ended up seemingly to be vaporware. And so, you know, that's an Elliott. It'll forever be. Everybody's a little skeptical when they see a new e-commerce platform or claims nowadays because of what was Elliott.
We totally acknowledge that skepticism and understand why. Again, like I mentioned, picking an e-commerce platform, you know, that's the platform that supports your sales. It's so important. It's a high risk decision, especially at enterprise level. So again, one of the motivations why we're one of the most open, transparent platforms out there, right? We want our customers to watch videos of the demo. We don't hide that behind a lead form, right? We want our customers to download and play around the technology. We want our customers to talk, our prospects to talk to our customers and partners. So that's just something that we have to commit to as a lesser known company, and it seemed to work out.
We've also got just a pretty good client retention rate. I've seen customers in my time here who there was one particular merchant, Harriet Carter. They did like as seen on TV, the best kind of trash. I say that with love. They grew on the platform. They went out to market. They looked at what else was out there, and they came back to Workarea from our old bespoke platform. Grew to the point where they got acquired. Somebody bought the brand and shuttered the warehouse. But I guess that's kind of the dream, right? But they had a 13-year run on our technology. Folks like yarn.com. I forget, Yarn's been 7 years. People stick with us because the platform grows and they're able to take that growth with them. And as they grow, the platform expands to handle them. So we do, even though as a platform, as the name Workarea, we've only been around for 6 years. There's over 2 decades of company behind that. And I also, it's funny because I don't think we actually touched on this, although it is the title of the stream today. I do want to address why Workarea, why that name. It's a funny name. Going out there, folks think like, is it like a WeWork? It doesn't really tie directly to commerce, but my argument against that is, I mean, what's a Magento? What's a Demandware? Workarea was actually our internal time tracking tool. We had workarea.com ages ago. And when you're trying to come up with a brand, you come up with a lot of weird fake words that are hard to spell. And Bill, I think wasn't it you or was it maybe Tyler that looked through our existing assets and was like, why not that?
It seemed to fit. And again, a lot of this is, our product team has such a really strong focus and point of view about what a commerce platform should be. And one of those things is, and again, Matt will show this. But really, really, really good business tools, right? So a non-technical person to be able to have an idea, do a merchandising task, have that data feedback to them and iterate. It's our customers that are doing the best stuff, they're working in Workarea in our admin day in and day out, and they're continuing to improve the customer experience with that tool. So it seemed appropriate.
Yeah, not to criticize your decision, because my brand name is a word that is made up and difficult to spell. But, I guess the question becomes, when you're going through that exercise, is it better to have a word that doesn't mean anything, even if it's made up and, you may not know how to spell it? Is it better to have something that doesn't evoke any thoughts? So you see that and you don't know, and then you could, you can set the definition. Or is it better to have a word that elicits thoughts that is something completely different than what you're actually trying to sell using that brand?
It's always difficult to come up with a brand.
Oh, of course. I mean, if you get popular enough, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, all right, lots of chat in the a lot of conversation in the chat about the skyscraper. They're still looking for the skyscraper. I think this is going to be some sort of Easter egg hunt type of,
To be fair, I was thinking more about Salesforce. Salesforce has a couple towers.
Ben says this is an interesting point. And I'm going to expand on this a little bit, but Magento Go was an attempt to get acquired by eBay, so it was extremely successful. I would argue that Cloud was an attempt to get acquired by Adobe, and that was extremely successful as well.
Right.
But Go did exactly what it was supposed to do.
I look forward to. I don't have the chat in front of me, but I look forward to reading the clarification. I never want to misrepresent. That's important.
All right. What kind of demand, Alan in the chat, what kind of demand changes on the type of merchants looking to use the platform are you seeing due to COVID?
Yeah, I think
buy online, pick up in store. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting to see during the pandemic. We've seen an increase in B2B interest. I think part of that is really just a wake-up call that they need to enable e-commerce, right, and sort of modernize the experience for their customers. We've seen an uptick in just recently. I think there was early on in the process, we got a lot of demand for people that had a great URL and an idea, right, and they I think the entrepreneurial attitude kicked in very quickly, once this happened. So we talked to a lot of folks that were probably a little bit too early on in their business to work with Workarea. But things are kind of, from our perspective, kind of starting back up again. I think a lot of the sales opportunities that we were working on kind of went on pause, just like the rest of the world, because, what the next week or even the next day would bring in terms of news was really unknown. I'm really interested to observe what's going to happen this holiday season. We're preparing for a big holiday season for our customers, but it's an unprecedented year. So it's something that we're tracking here every week.
Ben in the chat mentions we can all agree to make fun of Salesforce. So that's fair game.
Right.
Let's not make fun of Shopify. Let's not make fun of BigCommerce. Let's not make fun of Magento. Let's all pile on Salesforce as much as possible. So all of that's fair game. There's nobody here to defend them. If there's any Salesforce people in the chat, any fans, any employees, let me know, and we'll find somebody else to pick on. All right, last question I've got in the chat. If you have any more questions, post them. I want to get to this demo. I want to see this thing. So I want to spend at least 5 or 10 minutes or so just going through the admin, letting you show us the highlights. This is the last question I have in the chat, so if anybody has any more, post them real quick. Kevin mentions, with customer experience overtaking price and product as the key brand differentiators in 2020, how is Workarea addressing experience and personalization?
I love that question. Yeah.
Go for it, Bill.
Content management or content is really commerce, right? So again, having a system that handles that really well. It shouldn't be a separate thought process. It shouldn't be a separate workflow to do your merchandising from putting out a campaign. And we really strongly believe that. Number two, from a personalization perspective, we didn't touch on this, but Workarea, personalization really crosses a lot of things, right? Changing out content, targeting content, changing out pricing and promotions for different user segments. So we have a great segmentation engine in Workarea. There's a number of what we call lifecycle segments, which are fed by our insights engine. So they're data-driven segments that are automatic segments that our customers can use. First-time shoppers, loyal shoppers, and these are automatically updated. And then there's a whole kind of rule language where they can actually create logic to say, these folks, these shoppers, or these prospects or visitors are part of this segment. And because we're all integrated across the experience layer, work area customers can create different versions of the site targeted to different users across every aspect that you can change, right? So you can have an entire release in work area and site planner tied only to a certain user segment. Let's say your whale shoppers, right? They have specific pricing, their homepage is unique. This has natural applications to a B2B environment as well. So yeah, we obviously work with a lot of third parties that do personalization and optimization, but we're pretty proud of how we've integrated that into the tool and workflow. So it makes it easy. And again, not only doing it, having the data to show if it's working, right? So let's say you change your button from blue to red. You want to know, are customers converting at a higher rate, and have that feedback mechanism. So we provide that data as well.
All right, I think it's demo time. I think we've got all of the questions. I think it's you got to. This is your opportunity. It's your one chance. It's your one shot. Okay, like Eminem. I wished I had permission to play the song, right? But let's get into the screen sharing mode now. This is a new mode for us where we have the screen share. So just go ahead and let everybody that's watching know if we have glitches. So be it. We're using some beta software here to be able to pull in this screen share. But the floor is yours. Let's walk through it.
All right. First, I'm gonna check. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So what we're looking at is a generic installation of Workarea on, I've got a 2015 MacBook Pro. So there's nothing custom going on here. It's literally just pulling down a base install and filling it with some demo data. And right off the bat, I'm pulling down the menu here to show all the different features that I have installed. So you're looking at obviously your catalog management, but also a lot of people management for customer service, some B2B features here in terms of account, sub-account management, a lot of stuff, search customizations, all kinds of things here. But really to give an idea of like, here's the 5-minute walkthrough, maybe a 7-minute walkthrough. I like to just sort of create a category, merchandise it using search, and add content with the content management system. It is worth noting, so somebody asked about different languages. I've got mine set up for 3 different languages. I only speak one of them, so I can only write a few words in some of these. I do have multiple sites installed here, and if I want to get to something, say somebody's calling from Philadelphia, I can just search up here if I'm looking for a particular product or SKU. It really is a universal search in the admin. Usual dashboardy stuff here, but let's get into categories. And you're going to see, even though we've got reports, built into the system like any e-commerce system should in 2020, you're also going to see inline insights as you browse. These are going to pop up on categories, on products, on people, whatever. Little spark lines showing how well that this has been performing over the last 3 months. You'll also see like stars here showing that these are top sellers and whatnot. So when I add a new category, this is going to kick me into a workflow, because with as much as there is here, we do like to guide you through sort of a best path to get through things. And I'm going to lean on my old demo mainstay, the men's suits category, where having created that, it's going to create a URL for that. You can modify your URL later, and Workarea automatically sends a 301 redirect. Adding products. You can manually pick products, so that's using search to filter, and you click and drag and whatnot. We'll create rules for products. You can actually do both on a category, so backfill it with some dynamic rules. Maybe I start out with products in an existing category. In this case, I'm going to come in here, and we're going to see there are 68 products in my demo environment, but if I pick the men's category, it'll drop down immediately to 18 matching products. Again, we're using Elasticsearch and MongoDB for a speedy backend environment. We've got customers with millions of SKUs. You can't have a slow admin when you're working with a high SKU count. It just drags everything. All of these are kind of an interface for Elasticsearch, but you can also just use search and get right into it. Now, I usually just do a single keyword here, but if you want to get into Lucene syntax, you can do that to build really complex rules around what this category is. And that's important because you can use this as a sort of a logical collection of products that maybe you apply promotion to rather than a browsable category. Um, uh, you can also see some of these are sort of hard-coded. Color and size are based off of my product data. You can freely add product attributes, whether you're doing that through the API, through the admin, or just adding a column on your CSV upload. And you can use product data as a merchandising tool. This is live, so as products meet these rules in the future, it's going to expand. I'm not just setting these 4 products, and that's what you got. Jumping into content, we're going to use the same content management tool that we're actually using for your homepage, for landing pages. Even the mega navigation uses the same CMS. And you're not stuck
I should interrupt you, Matt, that workarea.com actually uses our platform for our site. So my team uses it every day.
Yeah, we dog food our own CMS. It's a non-transactional site, but we absolutely run Workarea on Workarea. So the only way this is different than like a homepage is because I'm on a category page, I have the option to add above the results, in the grid, or below the results. It's not really a templating system so much as a collection of micro templates in a way. So we call these responsive content blocks. And these are just what are available out of the box. This is something that SIs often build custom blocks out of our system, but we try to give you what we found most people use. So I'll keep it pretty quick. I'm going to pick one of the more interesting ones, the superhero here. And I'm going to make this something that maybe switches depending on the different screen sizes that I've got. I can pick an asset from my asset manager. All of our assets are going to be served through a CDN. That's part of the SaaS platform. So you can drag and drop from the desktop and load it into your system here. We can set it to crop, to resize, or switch, show different assets depending on different breakpoints that you have here. I'm just going to crop that. On each block, and I'm not going to add a whole bunch here, but for each individual block on the page, you can hide it for different screen sizes. You can tell that element of the page to only show for different types of different user segments. The updates are real time. It's actually hitting the same storefront APIs. Like you're literally seeing the same code that the storefront uses. So it's not like it looks a certain way in the admin, and then you get surprises with your styling out front. Any of these, of course, you've got all these preset ones, but you can always drop an HTML content block in there if you've got a client who knows enough to be dangerous. And you can save any of these as a preset. So if you build out